Hello, welcome back to the shop. Today, as is a surprise to no one, we're going to talk not Star Wars, but Ghostbusters. So before we get rolling, if you would be so kind, if you're watching this, to go to the right of your screen and just click in the comments whether you can hear me or see me. I was monkeying with my microphone to kind of go for like a whole podcast studio setup. So this is what it would look like if I had a podcast. I should have a podcast and call it If I Had a Podcast. As always, well, not always, as is more recently with me. Oh, it sounds great, excellent. Is my executive producer and lovely wife, Jamie. That's her hand. Say hi. They can see you. She didn't want to be on camera, and now she's on camera. It's live. It's live. So, as some of you may be aware, I got to work on Ghostbusters. And so today is my day after waiting for 2 years to finally get to talk about it with you. And of course, I'm wearing my crew hoodie made by one of the gang, Dustin, who a few of us worked on the crew. I'll explain the whole story later. But right off the bat, I want to burst your bubble. Okay, here it comes. I only worked on the film for 4 days. It was 4 awesome days. In September long weekend in 2019. I didn't get to meet anyone famous. I didn't, with one minor exception, I didn't design anything for the film. Most of the stuff that I worked on, you can barely see in the film. So, having said that, I'm going to tell all my stories of all the things that I think are cool about working for my first film, working on Ghostbusters, and respond to your questions if you have any about the experience. I'll tell all my stories, my geeky little nerdy stories, and I suspect that some of you, many of you, nay, many of you are like me and can live vicariously through my experience and really enjoy some of these quirky little stories because you're a maker, because you're a do-it-yourselfer, because you work on props. And it's kind of always in the background of our minds, like, wouldn't it be cool if I got to build something in a movie or work on the set of a movie? And I am just privileged that I got the phone call and got a chance to do that, to live the dream a little bit. Where do we even start? Well, I'm going to maybe say to my wife, would you filter out anything Star Wars or lightsaber related? Just, okay, any Star Wars or lightsaber related questions, nix it, only Ghostbusters related stuff. And I think I'm going to tell the story of how I got going first. And then when I see my wife waving because she's got a good one, I'll do my best to respond to your questions. Okay, here's how it happened. Picture with me, if you will. 2019, I got a phone call from a friend of mine named Shannon Chappell, who's a bit of a legend around here. I live near Calgary, and we're privileged to have a lot of really cool stuff shot in and around the area. And he is a master prop maker. And anyone who's anyone around the Calgary scene knows Shannon Chappell, but he's a bit of a ghost. He doesn't have an online platform. But we're friends. We had met at the expo years ago and talked props. So he gave me a call and said, hey, I'm working on Ghostbusters, and we need some extra bodies for a couple of days. Do you think you could come help? Yeah. So I said, I'm really busy with lightsaber stuff right now, but I can give you 4 days. So for 4 intense days, I showed up in his shop, and I got to work in his shop on set. And I quickly found out that the film had run into a snag regarding props. And they had called in a local crew made up of some of the Alberta Ghostbusters and Shannon and myself. And Shannon quickly endeared himself to Jason Reitman, the director of the film. I never met Jason. But I got to work on some of the props. And here was the catch. The snag was whether the film failed to specify all of what they would need to the prop shop in LA, or the prop shop in LA shorted them, or a combination of both, which is what I think happened. They were stuck. They didn't have the props they needed for a critical scene. And I'm going to try to not reveal anything from the movie. Spoiler alert, there may be questions related to scenes in the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, just be aware there may be spoilers. I'll do my best. So anyways, they needed props for the scene and they didn't have much. They had some junk leftovers from the proton wands and cyclotrons and things like that. And they needed a crew to come in over the long weekend and basically make these things ready for the soundstage. And I got to be a part of that. So I got to work on proton wands. I got to work on cyclotrons. I got to work on a whole bunch of little greeblies and things that you'll see all over the set. Primarily, here's the spoiler, the scene down the tunnel in the mountain. That's all I'm going to say. That set was primarily all the stuff we worked on. There are some really great shots in the film of the props. I didn't work on any of those. All the stuff that I worked on is stuff that's really in a dark room and it's really hidden by a lot of visual effects, so you don't get any really detail. A little disappointed. Okay, I'm a little disappointed they didn't get to see a glory shot of something I worked on, but it's there. I got to see it. I got to touch it. I got to work on it. So that's what I did. For 4 days, we tried to get this set ready, and there's a guy named Peter White who was kind of overseeing everything for us. And he had the idea. He knew exactly what things needed to be. And we worked hard for 4 days. And the last day, some of the crew stayed into the wee hours of the morning to get it ready. And then the next day, Tuesday morning, the crew came in and completely undid all of the setup that we did, which apparently is normal in the movie industry, and reset it up because they had decided to shoot the shot differently. And so I heard, I wasn't there for the shooting, but so a lot of that work got moved around and things got shifted around and you didn't get to see as much. But that's the kind of, in a nutshell, what I got to do. So do we have any questions? My wife says no questions yet. So I've got some stories to tell. I said a little earlier that with one minor exception, I didn't get to design anything in the film. Well, in that scene that I told you about in the kind of the temple cave area, portal, the tunnel, I don't even know what it's officially called. There's a setup of a lot of Ghostbusters gear. Oh, I'm going to take this opportunity also to kind of a qualifier. I am not a Ghostbusters super fan. So some of you are. I'm going to horribly offend you because I'm going to mispronounce somebody's name, or I'm going to reference a prop and I'm not going to say its right name or what it is or whatever. So just brace yourself. Please bear with me. I'm not a Ghostbusters super fan. There was a guy in the crew, his name was Jordan, and he was from the Alberta Ghostbusters. And whenever I had a question about something I was working on, hey, Jordan, what is this? What does it do? Is this supposed to blink white or red? How fast is it supposed to blink? All my questions, I was going to Jordan because he was the guy. He had built proton packs. He knew all about that stuff. So there was 4 proton packs up mounted on various elements of the set. They weren't worn by anyone. And there was proton packs and wands, the whole setup. There's 4 of them kind of pointing into this pit. I got to work on all that stuff. I got to build the mounting for the cyclotrons, proton packs. I got to work on the wands, and there was one where Shannon Chappell, I was kind of his shadow, his sidekick, his lackey. And I learned a lot from him on this film. But he said, okay, there's these 4 wands. Each one is supposed to be a little different. Like they were cobbled together from extra parts in Egon's shop. And he said, you get to outfit one of them. So really, you have the main part, you have the part with all the functional bits, you have the emitter, but in between there's almost like a heat shield. And I'm going to turn off my furnace. How rude, right in the middle of my story. Okay, so on each proton wand, there's a heat shield. And it kind of looks like a heat shield from a Browning machine gun. And there was one that was like that. There's one that Shannon did, which is very much like a heat sink with a bunch of discs all attached together. There was another one that was actually, I think, a leftover from one of the other sets, and it had half a heat shield on it. And then there was one that I got to do. So I decided to make it a little bit like the Browning machine gun heat shield style, but I did something a little differently with this one. I learned something from Shannon when working with science fiction and stuff like that. He hates to use the color blue. Little known fact about the man. As an artist, he just envisions things in color. He doesn't like to use the color blue. So I use blue. I decided, because then I would know, okay, that's the one that I made. It's got a little bit of a blue that you can see through the heat shield. And it's really cool because there's a shot that Jason Reitman put recently on his Instagram of him kind of on set working with something. And I've zoomed in on it, really like magnified it. And it's my prop. It's the prop that I worked on, that I designed that little piece for. So that was the only little thing that I got to actually work as a as an artist, as a designer. I did a lot of weathering. I did a lot of assembly. I broke something. I'll tell you about that in a little while. My wife keeps looking at the screen, so are we not getting any?
No, no, it's low, but there's one question.
Okay.
Troy Durer is wondering.
Troy.
Did you get to keep anything?
Troy asks if I got to keep anything. Nothing of consequence in the grander scheme of things. However, I pilfered a couple of stickers, and Shannon was gracious enough to let me keep this, which is the piece I broke. These are laser cut panels that you can see something similar on. Really, the only time in the film I think you can see it is on the chair, the gunner chair. There's a backing behind the proton pack that's a box. It's got things like this on the side, and we were building a bunch of them, 4 of them, to go in the set. And so there was these boxes, and had been fabricated of metal, and they needed these things screwed on rapidly. And so what we were using is self-tapping screws. And if you've ever used a self-tapping screw, you got to apply a lot of force to get that to go into metal. And so there's all these like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 screw holes. And here's right here. Can you see that? Can you see that? That's where my drill slipped and went right through the prop. Smash! And I'm like, hey, Shannon, can we fix this or hide this? He took a look at it. He goes, no, we're going to need to laser cut a new one. Okay. So I felt bad. He goes, you can keep that as a souvenir. So that's my souvenir. That's my Ghostbusters. I was going to put it on the wall and make something of it. I haven't done that yet. But that, other than the memories, fond memories, and all the things I learned, I didn't get to keep anything from the films. Any other questions? My beautiful executive producer. The team that I got to work with was Shannon Chappell, Peter White, and then the local Ghostbusters, Alberta Ghostbusters team. There was James and Ashley and Sean and Jordan and Dustin. Dustin's one of the ones responsible for making the hoodies. Everybody had a different skill set that they brought to the table, and we all worked really well together because we're all fans. We're all geeking out that we're actually there. So we got to build off each other, learn tips and tricks from each other. I learned a lot about painting and weathering while I was there, and a whole bunch of other things. Super cool experience. Okay, what else did I want to tell you? Oh, okay. As a maker, some of you may get a kick out of this. It was coming down to crunch time. I think it was either the last day or second last day. And there was one Proton 1. Now, all of these setups on the set that I got to work on needed to be functional. They needed to light up, blink, react, do things like that. So we were wiring them, and there was a guy there. I can't remember his name, but he was doing a lot of the Arduino for the internal LEDs. But some of the stuff, there was a Proton 1, and there was the guts were missing. So we had to kind of craft it on the fly really quickly. And there is, for those of you who are familiar with Ghostbusters, there's a little section where there's like 3 or 4 like little windows, and there's a light that illuminates them from the inside. And none of that was there. And it's supposed to be a little LED and a collimator, like a lens, almost like a little satellite dish that's polished, like inside of an old school flashlight. The light sits in the middle, and it kind of magnifies the light and spreads it out. We didn't have that. So I'm building this thinking, okay, we got to do something quickly. So I grabbed a Coke can, I think from Dustin, and I cut off the end of it, and I flipped it over, and I polished the aluminum and the inside where it's bowed, and then I drilled a hole in it, and we mounted that in the inside LED, and it illuminated perfectly. And we just stuck it in there with a bunch of hot glue, just long enough to survive. Like nothing I would ever sell in terms of a really high-end prop, but for the film, it needs to go up now, and it needs to work. So it was very new for me working on these quick deadlines and these rapid things and trying to find creative solutions. I took a couple of pictures of that just because I thought it was so weird and so cool that one of those blinking props that are on the set at Ghostbusters has got a Coke can for a lens or a collimator inside the LED. What do we got?
One more question. 8 Diabetic asked, did you do any coding?
8 Diabetic asks if I did any coding for the props. No, I did not do any coding for the props, and I don't really do coding. That's not really my thing. A lot of people look at the props that I get to put out, the lightsabers and things, and they're so advanced in terms of their technology, but I rely on other people. I rely on people like Irv from Plector Labs, who does all the coding and programming. I don't mess around with any Arduino or any of that kind of stuff, so that's not really my forte. My strong suit. So no, I didn't do that. Don't do that. Someday I'll learn that. Does that answer your question? What else we got?
Skywalker 77. Did you get to meet the
Skywalker 77 asked if I got to meet the cast. No. A couple people that I worked with got to meet and spend time with Jason Reitman, the director, and meet some of the cast who they all raved about. Everybody was really cool, apparently. But I didn't. I said to a couple of people, "Hey, if you need an extra hand here when you're shooting this scene, I'm available." But no, it was only kind of I was a subcontractor. You won't see my name in the credits or anything like that. So I was there very peripherally. So I didn't get to meet anybody. I mean, I met Ben Eady. And for those of you who are in kind of like the maker scene, you'll know who Ben Eady is. He's been with Adam Savage recently talking Ghostbusters and Bill Duran. And he's kind of another local legend, a guy. He's amazing when it comes to props. And he did a lot of work. I think he oversaw a lot of the key props for the film. So I got to hang out with him briefly and get to meet him, which was cool. What else we got?
Brian Connor is wondering, Brian Connor says, your mic sounds great, Rob. What?
Ryan Connor asked about the microphone. Thank you. Is it Ryan? Brian, thank you. This is a Rode shotgun mic, which I got to work with my SLR camera, and I found a little attachment where I can plug it into my phone, which is the vehicle that you are watching me through. And so I've kind of turned it down and just to kind of test and see if I could use it as in like a podcasting scenario. So I think it sounds better this way than if it's sitting over there pointing at me, which also works. But all of my videos in the last 10 years are probably shot with this microphone. So Rode, highly recommended. We're not sponsored by Rode, but let's see, what other stories do I got? I got to design one piece. Somebody had this idea. Now, only fans would think of this, and you're geeking out. You're getting to work on a film, and somebody comes up with the idea. We got to sign one of these pieces. I mean, they're all going to go end up in a Ark of the Covenant warehouse somewhere at Sony Pictures. But one of the cyclotrons, I think I have a picture. I was working on one of them. I don't know if it's that one, but inside the cyclotron, if you pick up, kind of the round cast metal bowl, there's a whole bunch of our signatures in there that got to work on it. So we just signed that little piece, put it back together. Nobody knows. So in the film, an actual screen used prop has got my name on it, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's cool. Do you think that's cool? I hope you do.
Skywalker 77 says the town looks a lot like the town he lives in Oklahoma.
Skywalker 77 says the town looks a lot like the town in Oklahoma. It's one of the beautiful things about living in Calgary. Those town shots were in a place called Fort Macleod, which is just southeast of Calgary. I've never actually been there. It's on the other side of Calgary from where I live. But in this area, you can drive half an hour and you have beautiful prairies and rural farms. You drive another half an hour and you've got a desert setting. And if you drive an hour the other way, you've got the Rocky Mountains. So you can film almost anything. And it's got world-class sound stages and studios and teams of crews of every trade conceivable in the film industry, top-notch people. So we're going to be getting a lot of, The Last of Us with Pedro Pascal is shooting in and around here right now. No, I didn't get to work on that. But
James Dalton says 90 minutes south.
James Dalton says 90 minutes south. And James Dalton is one of the people I got to work with on set. He was kind of like the 3D printing guru. So he was working his kung fu on the keyboards most of the time while we were doing prop stuff and giving his input. And I think he was also in charge of the music for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, James. But
Troy Durr is wondering, would you like to do this more in the future? And do you think this opened doors for you?
Would I like to do this more? Troy asked if I would like to do this more in the future and if this opened doors for me. And I'm assuming you mean working on Ghostbusters and not videos. Would I do this more in the future? Conditionally, yes. And here's why. Some of these hardworking people are putting in regularly 12, 14-hour days, nonstop, for months. I'm not really interested in doing that. I'm getting a little old to just run like that. And I've learned that also a lot of the prop designers that work in the film industry, they're paid a wage, sometimes a very good wage, but they don't own or have any rights to the stuff they create. They create the property of the film. So they make the most wonderful things that everyone's going to try to copy and all the fans are going to make for the shows. But no one, unless the film really credits them, no one really knows their name. No one really knows who designed it, who poured their heart and soul into that beautiful piece of art. So I would rather pour my heart and soul into things that I think is cool, and then everybody knows who made it. Now that may seem self-aggrandizing, and it probably is a little bit. But when you're an artist, you really attach personally to your work. And when your work it is instantly belongs to someone else, that it takes a little bit away from that. So there's that. But yeah, I think if I got the chance again, even for just a few days to work on a different project, I said this to Shannon. I said, hey, you can call me anytime you need, especially if it's something that I think is cool. Like if The Mandalorian or Star Wars ever gets filmed in here in Calgary and he doesn't call me, I'm going to go beat down his door. Short of that, who knows? Did it open doors for me? I don't think of it like that, because I'm not that ambitious, honestly. I think in terms of relationships and character. And I got to meet some really solid character people who I would go to war with anytime. That matters to me more. I don't know if that answers your question. But and let's see, what else we got for stories? That one. Oh, I told you about the part that I wrecked. That's a lot of what comes to mind. So I think unless you ask a question that kind of triggers something that happened that I had forgotten about, because it was 2 years ago, I sadly did not shoot enough pictures. I was kind of nervous. In my first film, I didn't want to offend anybody. I didn't want to, burn any bridges. And you're not supposed to take pictures of the stuff you're working behind the scenes. Of course, we do. Did I say that out loud on live video? But I limited that to things I didn't think I'd get in trouble for. And I I obeyed the NDA and kept that under wraps until the film was released. So I didn't take as many pictures as I would have liked of, the scenes that I got to work on, the things that I got to touch, that kind of stuff. So, you got any questions?
No, James Dolan was just saying at 2 a.m. on the set, it was almost a war.
Yeah, James was one of those people that stayed almost to the end on that last day. And I did not. I'm not that brave. I'm not that young. So.
Yeah, and Troy says, awesome. So happy for you that you get to do what you love.
Thanks, Troy. Troy said that it's awesome and that he's happy that I get to do what I love. And I think there's a bit of a trick to that, because I've been doing props now professionally for 11 years full time. And anytime you take something that you love as a hobby and then you turn it into work, there's a lot of people that have got lost along the way because the thing that you love becomes work. And it can become dull. There can become, there's a drudgery to it, even though it's cool. And there's a lot of frustrating elements of doing what you love. So it's not the fairy tale that a lot of people think. And I think the secret is trying to find the things that energize you and spend time with that. So that gives you energy for the, shipping and mailing and licking stamps and whatever else you got to do. For me, it's the bookkeeping. I'm the CEO. I'm the mail boy. I'm the head bookkeeper. I'm, all that stuff. So not all that stuff, because I get my wife to do some things. She creates the really cool boxes, and she filters my responses to many of the messages that you send me.
Monster X150. Are you a bigger fan of Ghostbusters now that you've worked on it?
Monsters X150 asks if I'm a bigger fan of Ghostbusters now that I've worked on it. Yes, absolutely. Anytime you get to work on something like that, you can't help but take a little bit of ownership. Like, yeah, I'm with those peeps. I am not a Ghostbusters super fan. I don't know all the lingo. I couldn't sketch a cyclotron from memory. Like I can with other Star Wars related things. But yeah, I'm definitely more engaged now than before. For sure. Okay, fire in a couple questions. If not, we're going to wrap this up. And this pretend podcast regarding Ghostbusters. I hope you weren't a little bit let down. Oh, Rob worked on Ghostbusters. Oh, it was only for 4 days. Oh, he didn't meet anyone important. Oh, he didn't actually get to design anything. Yeah, I got to weather some really cool boxes that you don't get to see in the film. Is there another question?
Yes. Obi Shane. Okay, let me ask you a question. Maybe you've answered this already, but I didn't see. Did they contact you after seeing your work online, or did you put up an ad up, or did you network or have an insider?
Obi Shane asked if basically how I got called in on it. Did they see my work? Yes and no. I got called in because I knew somebody, And because that somebody was Shannon Chappell, who also knew my work. And we had come together over prop building, and we'd spent some time together comparing notes and in our different worlds. And he worked primarily in film, and I worked primarily in my own shop for my own purposes. But we shared, I think, our artistic process, and just friendship-wise, we're very compatible. And so when they needed an extra pair of hands, he'd give me a call. So it wasn't because I'm a super master prop maker. It wasn't because I've got a reputation of doing this kind of thing. It's just because I knew somebody, and there was some trust there, and there was some respect for work. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
This is okay, sweet, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, man, really stoked
Thanks.
for you. Heck yeah, dude.
I don't know if you can hear my wife's voice in the background, but thanks for the support. That's her. It's a ghost.
James says your autograph is at Ghost Corpse.
Okay, so James says the autographed piece is at Ghost Corps in, where is that? That's where I saw a video recently. Adam Savage interviewed Jason Reitman, and they've got this kind of like a little museum to Ghostbusters. So if it's there, that's awesome. That's cool. There is also a prop that Shannon made, and this is when you're working with your friends. This is the kind of thing. And so he basically, okay, I got to tell this a little bit. I got to talk Shannon up because he walked on to set late to the game. He had been working on another film. They brought him in, and he has the gonads to say to the director, Jason Reitman, yeah, this is cool and all, but if I did it, I would do it differently. I would have done this, and I would have put this here, and I would have added this. You don't do that. It just popped out of his mouth. And Jason Reitman looks at him and goes, okay, let's talk about this. So Shannon comes back and brings this kind of scenario, what he wanted to do, some mock-ups. And Jason goes, I love this. Go with it. Can you have me this by tomorrow? So Shannon stays up all night and builds these things, brings it in, goes, okay, can you give me more? What else would you do? What would you do with this one? He starts asking him. So cool. One of the things they added in from the original set was batteries and cabling and things that weren't there. Because Shannon, in his mind, he looks at the set and goes, okay, there's proton wands shooting into this pit. How do they get their power? How do they work? How do they coordinate? Where's the central processing? He asks all these technical questions of when he watches the film, he wants to see how it works. He thinks like a super fan. And so he then brings in all these elements, and he got this old vintage battery charger that was part of the set. And of course, you have to strip off any labels. There can't be any labels for manufacturers. You know, your car battery, you can't say no die cast on it or whatever. It's got to be blank, or you make up a fictional label. And so he made up a fictional label on this battery charger that says, like, I think it said, Petka Electric Company, which is my last name, established, blah, blah, blah. And it looked all vintage. And so it was on set. And he said that he was there the day they were shooting, and they did some really cool close-ups of all that prop rig. And so we're hoping that somewhere in like an expanded, version of the DVD or whatever, you're going to get to see my name on this little prop. But nothing? Okay, we'll probably wrap this up. I will post some of these pictures of which I have referenced periodically over the next little while, just to kind of, toot my own horn and milk my 10 seconds of fringe fame. Is that a good way of describing this? It's probably a good way. I told the guys I'm going to milk it for all it's worth for that few minutes, and then we'll, move on with other things. But okay, I saw a couple pops come up. Any last questions, or are we?
Thanks for sharing your experiences.
Well, thanks for hanging out. I mean, I don't know how many people are watching. It looks like, there's a couple of 14. That's awesome. And I know some of you guys will watch this a little bit later when you're, done your Black Fridaying, whatever it is that you're doing on Black Friday. And for those of you in the States, thanks for making me part of your Thanksgiving weekend. And so stay tuned for more videos from the shop when there's something interesting to talk about. For now, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep building your sabers. If you've ordered them, they are coming. And thanks again for watching. Now, can you hit that little X on the screen? No, above that. There, that one. Bye. Yeah, okay. Sweet.